You bringing that coffee, sweetheart? Thank you.
All right, boys and girls, we are live. My name is Rob. This is Rob's School of Music, my interview series, and we are talking to the legendary rock and roll bass player, Mr. Todd Kerns. Hello and welcome.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing okay, man. As good as we can be, you know.
I know, right? We live in interesting times.
We do. I don't know. I'm over here in New York, and things are what they are. But
Whereabouts in New York are you?
we're in a town called Rockland County. It's about 40 miles outside New York City.
Great,
suburb.
great.
Yeah. So pretty calm here, but yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Exactly.
I'm in Vegas, and people keep, especially my Canadian friends are always like, "How is it down there?" Like it's supposed to be like Escape from New York or
Yeah.
that kind of vibe. I'm like, it's the same. I live in the suburbs. It is what it is.
All we can do is just smile.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we are a music school, as I mentioned. We have a physical location about 40 minutes or so outside New York City. And when COVID came in, we moved everything online.
Cool.
And since March, we've done a little over 3,000 virtual lessons.
Great.
And, yeah, it's been super killer. I feel very blessed. And something I started doing shortly thereafter was these, weekly or biweekly interviews just to kind of bring the rock and roll world into the world of the students.
Great. That's exciting.
Yeah, man, it's been super fun. I've gotten to talk to some really incredible people, yourself included. So thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. 100%.
Awesome. So the first question I usually start off with, so like I said, we're a school, obviously. Our students, most of them are younger, not younger in age, but more younger in their musical journey,
Sure.
Beginners.
Yeah.
And a big thing that they struggle with back when this was even a thing to deal with is stage fright, performance
okay.
anxiety. A big thing we do here is we put the students into bands and we book them at local bars and we get them, gigs.
Sure.
So you've played on some of the biggest stages in the world. Do you have any tips on overcoming stage fright, anxiety?
It's such an interesting thing to me because I've had this conversation on numerous occasions. Because I was one of those kids that was, for all intents and purposes, a shy guy. Like I was sort of like not super excited about, speaking in public or any of those things that normally freak people out. But I think music, for whatever reason, I kind of found my place as far as like standing up in front of people, peacocking around with a guitar on just seemed like totally normal to me. And I suppose it's also just watching countless hours of the Rolling Stones and AC/DC and KISS and whatever band I'd seen a million times in my life and just saying, well, this is what you do. You just get up here and you just, it's kind of like an exorcism of energy and just this whole, the whole thing. So to me, it's weird to say that I don't really and haven't really struggled too much with stage fright in that way. Although, sometimes having, Christmas dinner with a bunch of strangers or like, family or whatever can be more awkward than just getting up in front of thousands of people and playing loud. I don't know why that is for me. I also do believe that I was very fortunate as a kid to, instead of a high school job packing groceries or whatever, I was playing in a band with some older cats, and we would go like every Friday out to other towns and play in bands in high school dances and like community parties and that kind of thing. Some clubs, even though we were probably too young to be in them. But I kind of got my feet wet doing that. And then where I grew up in Canada, where actually once we kind of got a little older, we started playing in the Canadian club circuit, which was predominantly a top 40 kind of thing. But they had you could play 6 nights a week. You'd go to some town, load in on a Sunday, play Monday to Saturday, drive to the next town, and do the same thing all over again. So we'd play three to four sets a night, and after a couple weeks of doing that,
It's okay. We're closed.
But after a couple weeks of doing that, it's sort of normal, I think. I mean,
It's okay. Don't even worry about it.
But they also, for us, it was a lot of like, playing in front of like, I don't know, like workman crowds in some oil rig town where they don't really want to see you play music and they don't know why this loud racket is happening in their local bar.
Right.
So there was a certain amount of like baptism in fire playing to people who do not want to listen to you. That's very punk rock of you.
Right? My son is sitting out there, so they see someone out in the front, so he's probably just waved them on, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's probably terrified at the stranger outside in the lobby, but it's okay.
Understandable. But yeah, no, so mostly I think it was just like I always consider like the Beatles, when the Beatles went to Hamburg, they always talk about that before they became the Beatles, they went off to Hamburg, Germany and played like multiple sets a night and just played every single day. And they got better and better and better and became this really tight unit. You know what I mean? And I think it becomes super normal to be playing in front of people after a while. To be honest, I feel, this is weird to say because it's like there's times where I'll be in the club, sometimes I come to the show early. It's different when you're playing arenas and that kind of stuff. But in my world, like when I'm doing my own thing, I'm playing in a club and I come down early, I'm talking to people, you get overwhelmed and you think to yourself, I can't wait to get on stage to get away from this stuff, And it seems like a strange thing to say, but it's actually true. Like I'm like more comfortable on stage than I am, like I said, sitting at some awkward dinner with people I don't know, having to create chit chat.
But you know what, dude? Like that of all the people I've asked that question to, that is the most relatable answer to me personally. Not making
Interesting.
Not trying to make it about me in any way, but for me, I was the same way. Like the stage, I came out of my shell, but in real life, even still, I'm very shy. And like this personality, I'm here and as the teacher, and I've done gigs as well. But yeah, you put me at like a table with some strangers, I shut down like no one's business. So
yeah,
I get it.
It is a strange thing because there might be a certain amount of armor that goes on getting on stage, your guitar, loud music. You're kind of like people can't ignore you because you're so damn loud. So and I think that's part of the. It must be part of it because I was a very, like I say, no one would have called me outgoing as a kid. I was very sort of quiet and sort of. But once I sort of got into this world, you sort of create this personality. It's kind of like you find yourself, really.
Yeah, 100%. And like I've seen that happen with so many of our students along the way that like a parent will reach out and be like, my daughter I want her to play guitar. I don't know what she wants to do with her life, but let's try it out. And, 6 months, 12 months, 16 months down the road, all of a sudden, they got the leather jacket, the little nose stud in there. And it's like, oh, there you are. You found it.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's true. I think that's true of almost anybody. When you kind of find something, and no one can be forced to be passionate about something they're just not passionate about. If you find your thing, sometimes it's painting or whatever. It's like for me, it was a bit. I saw The Kids Are All Right, the Who movie when I was very young, and I went like, I'm going to do that. Right. I think I had a very difficult time looking at the Beatles or Elvis or even Kiss. Like I never really related that those were things I could do. I don't know why. I just thought the Beatles were from Valhalla and Elvis was a god and Kiss were superheroes. So it didn't seem like something I could do. But the Who seemed like, I guess, kind of the more punk rock thing, like smashing guitars. And I thought, this seems like a great way to get, this out of my system.
Yeah. Actually, that was literally one of the questions I always ask is, what's the thing that made you do the thing? But that's really cool. So what was the journey like? You say you're playing in bands and stuff and traveling around. Like, how did you get from playing around your hometown in Canada all the way to here?
It's a heck of a journey, actually. I mean, like anybody, I started out playing guitar. My dad was a musician. Well, he played guitar. I wouldn't call him a musician per se. He would like bust it out, play the three chord country songs, that kind of thing. He had a cool old harmony guitar with the F holes. Cool. And I would strap it on and run around the house pretending I was, go figure, whatever you name it, Angus Young or something. And then he was like, no. This is a C chord, that's a D chord, that's a G chord, or whatever the three. I think those are probably the three chords. And you can play a million songs with those chords, And I think, then it's sort of like other guys my age were starting to play guitar. And the next thing you know, you're making a horrible racket in the garage or in the basement. And then the horrible racket gets a little less horrible. And then and then my father in his wisdom sort of went, well, you have a guitar. I had a Epiphone acoustic guitar. And he said, you need a bass guitar. And I go, okay. It's the strangest logic that I think he kind of rattled onto. And I was like, okay. So we bought this, I think it's a 70s or 80s. I have to take a look at it. I have it, still own it, but it's a Gibson EB3 SG bass. And suddenly then I was playing, I would go to high school and it would be like, this guy has a Gibson, because Gibson was, a grown-up guitar to have, And I'm like, I could barely play, but I was suddenly playing with these older guys. And bass especially was the kind of thing that everybody wanted to be a drummer or a guitar player or the lead singer. No one ever said, like, I guess John Paul Jones and John Entwistle were always the quiet guys in the back. And so I just kind of found myself playing along with these guys. And then you get really good. You get better really fast trying to play with guys better than you. And it's one of the biggest things I recommend is even now to try and put yourself in a position to play with guys who are, better than you are, better than I am. I mean, that's sort of a subjective term, but I mean, like, there's a lot of guys that I sit in with and I'm like, I never went to the school of Steely Dan and all that. So
right.
I was more in the Cheap Trick and the New York Dolls and KISS, and that whole world was my thing. And then, you advance quickly enough. I was a kid. I started playing around in Canada. My brother and I eventually put a band together, and we got signed. We got signed out of New York City, which is weird for some kids from a small town in Canada. And we moved to Vancouver, Canada. Made records with Bob Rock, who did Metallica. And
that's awesome.
And Motley Crue and all that. And it was somewhat fruitful. We went on to do our own thing, became independent. We got a gold record out of our one record. Then we split up, as bands do, and I did a few things before I found myself in the States, and that's when the Slash gig kind of came up. And it was just sort of, I'm very sort of squashing this all together. Otherwise, I'll be sitting here talking about. And then in 1993, but yeah. But then I came to Vegas. Was playing a lot in the area. I just honestly kind of never really moved. I just sort of came down here because my friends were here and we were playing around and doing a bunch of fun stuff. Then the Slash gig came up, and that is just over 10 years ago now. And since then it's been around the planet 100 times, and it continues.
That's so cool, man. The Vancouver, that was like a hot spot for a minute, right? That was like, LA North kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's Vancouver still, especially when it comes to television and film. It's got a massive community for that. When I first went out there, Vancouver had a recording studio called Little Mountain Sound, and that was where Aerosmith and Metallica was doing some stuff there. AC/DC was doing stuff there. I think the newest record actually still done in Vancouver, the new AC/DC record.
Yeah.
Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, like the list goes on of all those bands. So when we went out there, it was just like this hotbed of stuff happening out there. And, that was the early 90s. So there was a massive change unfolding as we got there. And, the hard rock kind of thing really altered. And we found ourselves in this alternative rock world. And, we were young, and we went from being like kids who loved these kind of guitars, and then when, we were sort of like very honestly sort of slid into this alternative rock thing, which to me always felt like just another, it's just another chapter of the same book. So,
right.
But then, you find yourself back for the longest time, and until Slash, actually, I still considered myself in Vancouver and down in the States. Like, I kind of found myself bouncing around a lot more. Slash sort of made it that you just get on that spaceship and just travel around the world, and wherever it takes you, that's where it takes you. Spits you out back in Vegas for a while, then you got to go back to Vancouver and reconnect with your friends and family.
That's incredible. I have a bunch of questions about the Slash thing, but I want to just, so along the way, is there any, because that's an epic journey, come right out, first record, signed, Bob Rock, gold, like, to a young person picking up an instrument, like, you hit it, right there, and then to take that and ride the roller coaster to something even awesomer or equally awesome, or however you choose to look at it, like, what was the mentality to sustain that? Like, obviously I can tell you, like myself, you're made of it, so it's who you are, but like, do you have any tips on just dealing with the bumps in the road?
I think the bumps in the road really test who you are. And it really sort of makes you kind of go, do you really want to do this? Because, you know, I remember being a kid and traveling around in vans and then breaking down in Canada where you're going to freeze to death, you know, kind of, and, you know, and really basically struggling. But in all honesty, I don't remember ever saying to myself, I can't do this or I hate this. To be honest, I got to be honest, I was like 100% like, dude, I cannot wait. We get to play like tomorrow night. I will drive 20 hours to get to that gig. I'm ready to go. And and along the way, I saw friends of mine going like, you know, their dad had a company or something, and they went back to a job, or they went to school, or they got lives. They became adults, grown-ups, and with real, you know, prospects. And I was just sort of like, I never lost that, and I still really haven't lost that sort of feeling of like, isn't this great? We get to do this, like, right. Whether it's like being in a studio or a rehearsal, or even sitting down to learn songs that are like going over material for an upcoming rehearsal. I really enjoy that, and I don't know if it's the kind of thing that you can just sort of like create. You kind of either have that or you don't. So I mean, I have a lot of friends who are really passionate about other things, and I just don't share that passion, but again, yeah, there's going to be, no matter what you do, especially when you decide to do something off the normal path. I always say to my friends, I'm always like, look, the amount of time I put into the music industry, if this was any other job, like I started in the mailroom, I'd be the president of the company by now. You know, I mean, that's just the reality of the amount of time that goes into this. But, you know, there's no guarantee. There's a song by KISS called God Gave Rock and Roll to You, which is originally an Argent song, if you want to go down this nerd rabbit hole that I always go down. But there's a great line in that song that says, it's never too late to work 9 to 5. And I've always held on to that line. I thought, you know, it's true. You know, it's like you can be, and it goes through anything when you do this sort of, whether it's acting or comedian or music, you know, anything that's really kind of off the beaten path, you can go off and have a hit TV show, and there's no guarantee that anybody's sort of waiting for you to give, when that wraps up, to give you another TV show or give you another movie. It's just sort of like, it's the nature of this wacky business. So if you're lucky enough, and I do feel very fortunate to have sort of stumbled along the way, because it seems like when you look at it on paper, it all makes sense. Then he just went to the States and he just got the Slash gig. It's like, it's not really like that. I was down here for about 3 years, you know, doing my thing, playing, having a blast, making music with friends and whatnot, and then stuff like Slash just appears. But you know, you have to go and prove yourself. Quite often, you have to kind of prove yourself again, and I think that's part of the thing is you just got to keep going. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is, as I got older, I stopped saying no to anything. You know, I started being like, yes, let's do that. Okay. And as I had a conversation with Dave Ellefson from Megadeth, and one of his great quotes is something that I also believe is, it's better to be double booked than not booked. You know what I mean? Like, you have to figure out, like, on November 7th, I've got to do, oh man, I got to do both those things. You know, you got to figure it out. It's better than looking at your calendar and just seeing nothing, you know? Yeah. Which is kind of what COVID is, actually.
I mean, I want to unpack a lot of what you just said, because I think it's so brilliant to put it that way. I mean, first of all, keep going. There's a whiteboard in front of me. I can't turn the camera to see it, but that's my personal mantra. I literally have written, keep going. Yeah. Because like, you know, something that I try and instill into the students, like my musical journey, you know, high school band, college band, touring, more touring, endorsements, PRS guitar endorsement, like, oh my God, I made it. And then all of a sudden, like, I was having a kid and I said, you know, I shouldn't be on the road anymore. So I started doing like the corporate gigs, wedding bands, stuff like that, still recording, still putting music out, but focusing on that. And then the opportunity to start teaching music. And then all of a sudden I have the school. And now due to COVID, it's coming back. We started putting out music, rock music, because I made a rock music. And then this Dave O'Day, who's a big producer, did a remix of our rock song. And now our rock song's on BPM, on Sirius Radio. And all of a sudden, like, a whole new channel opened up. And that's kind of the thing that I try and instill in anyone who wants to pursue this is keep going. Don't say no. Take every opportunity that comes your way. Don't be pretentious of one gig over the next gig. A gig is a gig. You got to eat. And very cool.
To be honest, a lot of the things that scared the heck out of me, saying heck because I don't know how old your viewers are.
You could let them fly.
I'm always, I have children. But you know, it's one of those things where I think there have been things that I remember. I was telling the story not that long ago because I make records now as an acoustic. Like I love doing that. I was really inspired by like the Johnny Cash records where it was just him and a guitar. I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever heard. So I did that. But I remember years, like late 90s, a friend of mine was doing a benefit show. And he was like, we're doing a bunch of us are getting up, we're playing songs, acoustic guitar. It's going to be fun. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, absolutely. It was the great cause. And I remember hanging up the phone back when you would hang up a phone. And I remember saying like, I've never played in front of an audience with an acoustic guitar. What the hell am I talking about? And I'm like, but I remember saying like, I've always wanted to. Why wouldn't I do that? So I remember like 1998, 97 or something like that. I stood on stage with an acoustic guitar because there's something really, the net that catches you in a rock band is like, if people don't like you, you just keep playing. Your loud drums, loud guitars, it doesn't matter. You force them to sit through it. But when it's, I have the greatest respect for my comedian friends because it's literally a microphone.
Oh my God, I couldn't.
Oh, it's just horrifying. But I mean, I'm always impressed. But so the acoustic guitar is a step away from that, where you're literally like, and it's weird to me because you can hear the humming of the audience, the talking. No matter, even if they're listening, you're still hearing like, the hum of the audience and the whole thing. You're like things you don't notice when you're loud. You know what I mean? And so it really kind of, again, that's another one of those things that I was kind of like. It didn't feel supernatural to step into that. I've also done a little bit of acting in my life, which was very similar thing where someone, I had so many friends in the film industry and TV industry when it's, it'd be like, well, we need somebody with long hair and tattoos. So Todd has long hair and, that kind of thing. So, so that thing kind of happened. And that would be like, my initial instinct would be absolutely not. I am not interested in doing that. But it was the kind of thing where I think I've always been pretty good at like, you know what? Okay, I think I should do that because it's sort of my instinct to say, oh, absolutely not. It's different when you kind of look at something and you think, that's not for me, or it doesn't sound like fun. But it's another thing when you kind of say, I should face this fear, and go all in, and then right. Often you come out the other side, and I did come out the other side with things like acting and go like, that's not really for me, but I'm still glad I kind of went down that alley because, again, it comes up almost, it comes up a lot. I get offered a lot of things, and there's lots of things that I go, and it depends on the reasons. I've always said it's kind of like, it's either about money, or it's a lot of fun, or it's really great for your career, or you just love the dudes you're playing with. All those things kind of have to line up. And sometimes a gig is one of those things. Sometimes a gig is two of those things. Sometimes a gig is all of those things. If it's none of those things, then I'm kind of like, nah, it's like, it doesn't pay very much. It's a total hassle. It's like, I don't, you don't get along with any of these people. It's like, well, why would I do that? But unless it's something you're trying to like, building blocks to kind of get yourself connected in a scene. Like if I was to move to Nashville tomorrow, I would kind of be starting from scratch in a kind of, not really, because I do have a reputation, but either way, every city you go to has a thing. And you kind of got to get inside the thing before you can really connect. So I just love the thing, like it's who I am.
That's what it is, man. You got to love the process and every step of it. So in regards to the whole Slash world, legendary guitarist, obviously. What's the
He's okay. He's got a real future. That kid's got a future.
Yeah. If he only had some sort of
if he had
a wardrobe gimmick of some kind.
He needs some kind of a gimmick. Exactly.
But I met him at the NAMM show like 20 years ago. I waited on a line at the Marshall booth forever. And when I got up to him, the dude behind me was wearing the same shirt he was wearing. So the photograph we have together is me smiling at the camera and him pointing at the dude behind me because they have the same shirt. Damn it. That's still hanging on the wall.
Hilarious.
But he was super cool in my super small interaction. What's that process like when you guys are putting a record together? Like, is it? I don't know. Just what's that like? I can't even imagine.
That's a really interesting thing because with Slash, I was just telling the story yesterday to a friend of mine how in the 90s, like around 91, my band went down to Hollywood to become superstars. It didn't really happen that way, but we played gigs at the Whiskey A Go Go and the
Mm-hmm.
Roxy and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And we would hang out at the Rainbow every night, and everybody was at the Rainbow back then. It was like they always talk about like the '90s happened, and all of a sudden the Sunset Strip just died. It definitely slowed down mid '90s, but in the early '90s it was still very much alive. You could literally go to the Sunset Strip and never go into a club, and it was like you were at a party on the street all the time. Mm-hmm. And so we would go down to the Rainbow. We were down there a couple of weeks playing some showcases and whatnot. And the Rainbow, you know, like I say, Lemmy was there, all these, you know, like we were like literally small town kids with a piece of straw hanging out of your mouth, like, wow. You know, and Slash was there. We were in the November Rain booth at the back. If you mm-hmm. are familiar with the Rainbow, there's mm-hmm. a big booth in the back. And Slash was in the corner that he would always sit in. And he got up and he sat down at our table. Hey, who are you guys? It was like, we're like the guitar player from the biggest band on the planet just sat down at our table and goes, and he went around to him, Todd, John. He went around the table, and that's the kind of guy he was. He was just this regular dude. Like, he was like really a cool guy. Now, he has no recollection of that. He always goes, was I nice? If that story ever comes up, I go, yeah, you were great. You were awesome. It was the best interaction I could possibly have with somebody of that stature, you know.
Sure.
But then you fast forward all these years later, our drummer Brent Fitz, who's been an old friend of mine for like 30 years in some, you know, in off and on kind of ways. He's also Canadian. He gets the gig with Slash, and then he starts pulling all kinds of strings to go, you got to get my friend Todd. He's the guy for this gig. And at the time, I was sort of like, I was really busy with a project I had here in Vegas, and we were like constantly working and making music and doing stuff. So it wasn't like I was clamoring for or like begging for the gig. I was just sort of like, in fact, I was actually just his like cheerleader going like, that's amazing, dude. Good for you. That's awesome. And then when it came up, I was like, okay. Slash was supporting a solo record with Myles Kennedy and Lemmy and Chris mm-hmm. Cornell and Iggy Pop, all these different dudes singing on it. And we were just, and I wasn't sure, are we going out for 3 months of just like flyouts on weekends? Like, you know, but it went on for a year and a half. And then all of a sudden it was like, Slash just very casually says, so we're going to make the new record with the band. And I'm kind of like us? You know, kind of like very sort of, he goes, yeah. I go, okay. So, I mean, you know, we're kind of like, the process is interesting because in Slash's world, you know, it's just like a wealth of legendary riffs all the time, like all the time. Every time he starts playing a riff, I immediately think to myself, I'm going to be watching some kid on YouTube play this riff in a year from now. You know, it's like, it's that kind of thing. Like he just has like these classic great riffs, and that's who he is, you know? And, so the process of making records is generally, you know, myself and the rest of the band, we're there kind of massaging this together to turn them into songs. Myles Kennedy's job is lyrics and melody, which is a really as a songwriter myself, it's been interesting in the Slash camp because I don't really apply a lot of like arrangement stuff. I really have to kind of call on, and I've made a couple of, you know, I've got a couple of credits here and there, but largely it's more like people are always like, you know, bring Slash a riff, and I go, so we can have 1,000,001 riffs to work on. It's kind of like, it's like, you know, he's got like these legendary riffs. I think it's just it's hard to kind of come in and go, what about this, you know? But he really he's really a wealth of this stuff. Like it's easy for him just to pick up the guitar. Like, I don't know what he's doing right now. He's probably playing guitar. Like, he's that kind of guy. Like, he's literally always playing guitar. He's not a super chatty guy. He's not super like, all his interaction and communication comes from the guitar. So he kind of eventually, you know, we start putting things together and jamming, and then Myles comes in and puts the vocals and melodies together. And largely, we try to record as live as possible in the recording process. In fact, it's never live enough for Slash. The first one we did in 2012 together was the album called Apocalyptic Love, and it is pretty live off the floor, at least the backing tracks. He always gives me massive credit of like, oh, Todd never made any mistakes. And I go,
that's
I
awesome.
I don't remember it like that, but I'll let you build that myth, you know. So it's never quite, like, it could never be live enough. Like, he loves, I mean, like, when we work out songs, it's like, hey, let's go through that solo section again. Like, well, as we're arranging the song, he's writing the solo, so that when we go into the studio, he's not like, he plays the song as if he's playing it live. He goes, and then the solo comes up, he plays the solo. It's not like he plays the rhythm guitar and then puts the solo on later. He generally tries to play the entire thing as a live performance. And
that's awesome.
I think, honestly, as time goes by, I think it will become more and more live than it ever has been. If it was up to him, I think we would just rehearse ourselves to death so that we can go in and just play it, as opposed to like, piecing it together, especially in the way we do things now digitally. Although in our world, it's sort of a mismatch of digital versus analog and all that kind of stuff too. So.
Well, you're definitely correct in terms of, anytime you guys put out a record, I listen because I'm a fan, but also I listen as a teacher because I'm going to be teaching someone one of those riffs, guaranteed, every time. Yeah. So it's like, there aren't a lot of records that come out as, a fan and a teacher that you can just guarantee that some guitar, that's like, I can't even imagine being part of a process knowing that that's for a fact going to happen. And I can tell you on the other side, that happens every time.
I'm not surprised because I've seen it every time since 2000. Well, since 2010, I've been around. So that's 10 years. Watching it kind of like, some song we rehearse and then like a year, when the album comes out, I'll be like watching some kid play that riff, and it's awesome. It's amazing to see. Like, that Slash is a very inspiring guy, and it's been, we get sort of like, you don't take it for granted, but you become so normalized by it that you forget once in a while that, oh yeah, people like picked up a guitar because of that guy.
Right.
It's the way it is. Yeah.
That's super cool. I read there's new music coming out also, but I don't want to open the can on anything.
I always get in trouble for talking to.
Yeah,
so I assume down the line, hopefully, knock on wood. It's such a wacky time trying to think of what you're supposed to do when you make music. Like, I got friends in Corey Taylor's band, Slipknot, Corey Taylor, and a lot of people, Seven Dust are putting out new music, and I'm like, what does this mean? Like, we can't even play shows yet. I mean,
that new Seven Dust record is great. If you check it out,
I'm sure it's
really good.
Elvis did that. Michael Basquiat, the guy who did the last couple of Slash records, so he's super talented, and Seven Dust guys are amazing.
Yeah, I buddy of mine used to work at a rehearsal studio in Jersey. He calls me one night. He's like, "Come here right now." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, and it was like an hour away. "Come here right now." And they were there. They had been like blocked it out for 2 or 3 days rehearsing. They were the coolest guys. Come hang out. Blah blah blah. It's like, wow, I like it. When people are accessible and down to earth, it just opens up like this. Like, this is so special because it just opens up like the wall. And it's like, no, we're just people talking about cool stuff. There's some of us have cooler stuff to talk about than others.
Well, that's the thing, and people sort of, maybe it's the Canadian small town guy in me, but I really do love talking about music or The Mandalorian, whatever, just stuff, it's like, I'm that guy that's, well, as you can tell right there, but I'm that guy that's just, I'm really jazzed by music, and my friends and I are constantly sending around like, old bootlegs of Cheap Trick stuff. Oh, I've never seen this before. We're just those guys. We're just really excited about music. That's, how can't you be, really?
Exactly. And I think that's, when we had people come into the school, like, my vision was to create a community where people could get turned on to things like that. There's 300 concert DVDs, bootlegs, and official ones out that are constantly on loop in the lobby. I have a display case of all my guitar pedals that I let people take out like library books.
Nice.
So it's like they can, and I think once we shut down due to COVID, there's like a couple that didn't come back, but it's okay. They will.
Yeah, exactly.
But you referenced KISS a few times.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I saw you play with Bruce on the KISS.
That's a Gene Simmons axe bass right there beside you.
You have all my good things about you. You got the Van Halen, the KISS, Star Wars. It's like we're best friends. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I think we're going to get along fine. Yeah. Yeah.
But don't spoil it. I didn't watch the new Mandalorian, so don't tell me yet, please.
I haven't watched it yet either.
Okay, good. So we're safe. We're safe. Good. Yeah. So I saw a video of you doing "Tears Are Falling," which is my favorite KISS song, with Bruce on the KISS Cruise, and I've interviewed Bruce twice. Awesome, amazing human being. What is that like to perform with people who are in a band that you grew up on?
It's actually,
I guess Slash is the same category too, but yeah,
exactly. Yeah. There is a surreal moment to it, because suddenly you're a grown up, you play music, and it becomes almost a little bit normal. You know what I mean? Like even in the Slash camp, we've had Alice Cooper on stage. We had Lemmy several times before he passed. Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick, Brad Whitford from Aerosmith. You know, so it was always kind of this sort of, you know, like it's one thing when you have like, you know, Fergie gets up and plays with us, and I'm like, she's amazingly talented, but I didn't grow up on the Black Eyed Peas.
Right.
I grew up on Aerosmith and Motorhead and all those bands like Cheap Trick and all that stuff. So when those guys come around, I am immediately like 12 years old, you know, I freak out. But and KISS is no exception, especially because the first time I finally was able to see KISS was 1985, no makeup, on the Animalize tour, and the guitar player was Bruce Kulick. So it's never lost on me, even though as years go by and it just becomes normal to know Bruce and to be like, you know, hey, what's going on? You know, but I always go back to that moment and being like, wow, because it was a major impact on me. Like, you know, seeing your favorite band finally live, even though they weren't wearing the makeup anymore, they still had a massive chapter without the makeup in that era. And I was all in on that whole era too. So yeah, you know, I am a part of a KISS pinball machine out there. That's a Gene Simmons mask on top of my upright bass. I don't know if you can see that, but you know, it's just
the pop figures back there. So
oh, well done. Yeah, I have those somewhere. But yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, there's a lot of us who can just sort of like plug in and just jam for hours on KISS songs. It's just sort of what you do. It's you know, it's a language you learned, and you had to be the right age, I think, when you came into KISS, because you know, I always knew older guys that were always like, oh, that's stupid, you should be listening to Yes or Rush or something like that, and I was always like, that stuff doesn't speak to me, this does, so I'm gonna play this, you know. And punk rock and all that kind of stuff that also was in my realm of fun, you know. So yeah, it's when we get to do the KISS Cruise, which is really interesting because the Bruce Kulick thing, Brent Fitz from the Slash band plays in that as well. Our good friend Zach Throne, who plays in Corey Taylor's band from Slipknot now. We do these shows. We started with Bob Kulick, who unfortunately passed away, Bruce's brother. And we focus entirely on Bruce's chapter, you know, this whole kind of like, and at first I'm kind of like, look, I'm a fan. And like you, it's kind of like Tears Are Falling and all those kind of songs. I love that stuff. But I go, are people going to be like, you know, yeah, is everybody going to know these super deep cuts that we're getting into? But on a KISS Cruise, it's like a Star Trek convention, you know, for KISS fans. You know, it's like they are invested. They know everything. And you cannot dig deep enough. There's no such thing as too deep for these guys. So to us, it was just like you'd get on stage and just play and have a blast. And they're fans. I'm a fan. It's just like, you know, we couldn't enjoy it more. And they always seem to really appreciate it. So we were supposed to be literally doing that right now. I think I was supposed to be coming home from KISS Cruise 10, but
such a bummer, man.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
You know, it's funny, not to harp on KISS for too long, but for me, I'm born in 1983, so my first KISS was the KISS without makeup. On God Gave Rock and Roll to You on the Bill and Ted Bogus Journey soundtrack, and then and then they put the makeup back on, and then I was like, wait a second, there's a whole other thing that I didn't even know this thing, and it was like, I took my son 2 times in the last 2 years to see him on the farewell tour, and it was his first concert. He was 8 at the time, and I'm just taping him as the curtain drops in Detroit Rock City, and just watching, like, and he had the Gene Simmons makeup on, like people are calling him Little Gene. Chris Jericho was there. It was at Madison Square Garden.
Sure,
and it's like, look, it's Jericho and Little Gene. Let's get a picture, but I don't want to bother him. But yeah, dude, it's cool the way, you know, music can just affect and connect.
That's the one thing about a band like KISS, is that it's so multi-generational. And I think that to see a child's experience, you know, when you think I was that age, just, you know, getting knocked out by a band like that, and then to watch your kid do that it's almost not surprising to me, because KISS in and of itself, the gargantuan show, whatever gargantuan show you're seeing in some other band, you're going, well, this is all was started by a band called KISS, you know, Fire and Pyro and all that stuff is like the theatrical level of what KISS does is, you know, they were the pioneers of that, you know, and it's still, to witness it now, and they're still my favorite band. I mean, like I've been very fortunate enough to be on those cruises, to have moments with guys like Gene and Paul, and just be like, I like I say, when you become a grown man and you're a professional and you do this for a living, you stop being like, dude, in 19, you're getting old. You just kind of like chill and be with them and hang out. And that, because I could just as easily, annoy Slash with minutia about like how much Appetite for Destruction rattled my cage, But it's all of that is in there, all those bands, all that music, all that DNA is in here now. So it's kind of like easily called on in a funny way. Like if when stuff like when Bruce calls and goes, hey, I want to do this thing, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, you get Zach, you get Brent Fitz, and it's like, yeah, we're all part of that school. We are invested, and we know I might need to go over that song or that song, but I'm good to go. Let's do this.
That's so cool. It's so cool just to have, a career arc that is taken to a place where you're on that, I would say Rolodex, but that is not culturally relevant. You're on that list to get pulled from.
Well, somewhat. I mean, all that stuff, it comes from just being around. I mean, again, in the Bruce camp, I play guitar and sing. I'm the lead singer and one of the lead singers, and I play rhythm guitar in that show. So when I started out, like I was telling you, I played bass, but I could always play guitar, and I never got bit by that sort of like, let's learn Eddie Van Halen songs. Right. I was sort of like, again, he was like, when I talk about the Beatles or Elvis, when Eddie Van Halen, I was like, well, that's for like people who know like 6th degree black belt of guitar. I loved like Rick Nielsen and Pete Townsend and Keith Richards, and I love that world. Like I really enjoy that stuff, and I can throw down like in this inversion of that chord or da-da-da-da-da. But I just never had that sort of thing in me that said I want to play this super crazy fast thing or whatever. And but as a bass player, I started playing bass. I became the singer in the band, which the way things happen when you're a kid, it's usually like, okay, now you sing one. Okay, now you sing one. And then when they finally kind of go, okay, now you sing another one. Now you sing them all. You're kind of like, I don't want to be the lead. I've always said I would literally be happy to just stand there on stage quietly in the background playing. I don't know how quietly I would do it, but but the fact that it became like, that I could carry a tune, and I got pretty good at talking to the audience and all that kind of stuff. Next thing I know, I'm the bass player, lead singer. It wasn't until my brother started playing bass that I went over to rhythm guitar, and he played bass, and we just sort of built that thing. So, but bass has always been a part of my thing. So that's another interesting thing that sometimes in the school of music kind of thought, like I was one of those guys that, well, I'm a singer and I play guitar, but I'm a bass player and I can sing the harmonies, and so I try to wear a lot of hats so that, what I find really interesting is, as soon as I'm done this gig, I kind of look around and I go, if I was just a bass player, my limits, what's out there, the opportunities would be so much more limited than the ability to play guitar or being a singer or a songwriter or any of the stuff that involves being in the studio. So I think it's good to kind of spread yourself out. It doesn't mean you should like, at the risk of your one skill, like you should be a less, take away from your guitar playing by doing other things. It's like, no, my passion of it and what I love about music is just kind of like, if you asked me to be the keyboard player, it'd be like, well, I'm not really a keyboard player, but I'll figure it out. Right. yeah. It'd be tough.
But that's exactly like a big part of my philosophy and the business model within the school. Every one of the lesson rooms here, first of all, we have Mesa and Marshall and Fender and pro amps, pro guitars in all the rooms. Every room has a piano in it. There's a big drum room in the back with an electric kit, an acoustic kit, more amps, half stack. So we're always saying, okay, well, and everyone has to sing. The third question is like, do you want to sing? And no matter what the answer is, it's, well, you're gonna, because I always want to instill in people that, it doesn't have to be the prime focus, but if you're playing a guitar, you should be able to know that, okay, I'm playing a G chord, let's try and match that note. Okay, and then a flat, let's fix it. So that's really cool and validating to hear from someone who's doing it, that, the more versatile you are, the more attractive you are to finding work as a musician.
Well, I will say, as a guy who can sing, I've gotten a lot of gigs just being, oh, okay, well, he can sing all these harmonies. And even in the Slash gig, I don't think there was even really a consideration of anybody singing harmonies or anything. It was just kind of like they needed a bass player. But when you're in that gig and you're looking at all these recordings, I'm going like, there's so many great harmonies on these songs. So we really ended up building this sound. And I know it's not the focus of the Slash featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators. Is obviously the guitar player in the band is a rock and roll Hall of Famer. So, but for the rest of the stuff, it became like, as we work on songs, it became like Myles would sing his lead vocals and he would literally be like, okay, see you later. And it was sort of like, he has that confidence in me to go like, now sing all your harmonies on these songs. And it is such a big part of our sound that when we do it live, it's like we sing so good together. I mean, he's a monster singer, so being able to sing with him is an absolute pleasure. But it really has, for me, been a really a bonus as far as like getting a gig and being able to sing harmony is pretty major skill.
100%. I didn't realize that you were singing the harmonies on the record too. What is the process? Like how you write them? Because I don't have very many. Most of the people I wind up talking to are not the singer or singers in much of a capacity. So that's really fascinating to me. Like, how do you go about that? What's your vocal maintenance? That's even more important. Like on the road, like.
I am the worst guy to ask because I really come from the land of playing smoky bars for 1,000 years and really not having anything by way of training, and that I feel very fortunate because I've had when I say I have had problems along the way, because anybody who sings for a living is eventually going to hit walls, whether they have a cold or exhaustion. It's all the same thing. It's like anything as physical as singing will mess you up if you don't take care of it. But when it comes to like singing, I mean, a lot of things are sort of obvious, and I don't mean to dumb it down too much. But I grew up on the Beatles, and you listen to the Beatles, and if you jam songs with your friends, and they're doing like, when I was younger, so much younger than, and you're going, when I was young, I never, and you're like, you start to kind of make sense of like, that guy's singing this and this guy's singing that, and when you sing it together, it sounds awesome, And I think it was an early fascination for me and a lot of my friends being able to sing harmony. It wasn't like we were sitting around singing like barbershop together, but when I was never really into like, I have a great appreciation for things like Journey and bands like that, but it wasn't really my forte. But I always had deep respect for the fact that there's guys on stage who will step up and carry second, third, fourth harmonies in a song and go like, well, that's no joke. Like and a lot of the time it seems to be something that kind of largely gets overlooked. I remember seeing like bands like Judas Priest. I was really into like metal as a kid, and I was always fascinated by the fact that they really, Rob would get up there and sing, and there really wasn't, there'd be harmonies on the record, but they wouldn't sing them live because I guess they just didn't sing those. And I was like, so it always seemed kind of weird to me because I grew up, like I said, I started as a bass player in a band. I eventually was forced out front to become the singer. And then I was like obsessed with things like Sting, in the Police and bands like that, which taught me a lot about playing really weird syncopated parts, but being able to sing something that almost kind of is in direct contrast, which is actually guys like Geddy or Sting. It's really impressive to watch it happen. There are still songs where like there's a song called "Driven to Tears" off of Zenyatta Mondatta that drives me crazy because it's like the bass line is so its own thing, and Sting is just singing as naturally as possible. When I watch him do it live, I'm like, damn, dude. And it's that kind of constant sort of like this thing. But I eventually sort of like not learned, but you really have to practice the ability to split your brain in half. So this half's playing the bass or the guitar, and this half is singing the part. So there are times, even in the Slash and Myles Kennedy Conspirators band, where there are parts I put harmonies on the record. Because when you're doing harmonies on the record, you're just standing by yourself singing the third above Myles Kennedy or whatever. And then I get into rehearsal mode and I go, oh, dude, this is really not, it's like totally in contrast with what I'm playing in my part. So, but it becomes really normal. Like, and I think that growing up on KISS is in a lot of ways is a disguised version of their version of the Beatles. You know what I mean? Like multiple singers, lots of harmonies, and the ability for Gene and Paul especially to sing together. And so to me, it was always an early fascination, being able to sing and sing harmony with each other was always important to me. But yeah, it's not for everybody. I've learned that.
Yeah, but it's definitely like my girlfriend. We make music together. She's a singer. She's been singing since she's a little kid. She is a harmony machine, and she hears like not even just the regular, the third, but she hears like the awkward, funny ones, like the Alice in Chains ones, and she hears them so naturally that like when she's whistling along to a song, she's whistling some weird harmony. I'm like, what are you doing? And she doesn't even realize it because it's just, I think some people just have that, and that's such an incredible skill.
I've known a lot of people like that. Yeah, it's actually taught me a lot too of like guys you wouldn't expect, like drummers and stuff like that, who just have a knack for an interesting harmony. And that's, it's a skill. And to be honest, well, your question earlier about how do we do it in the studio, it's often, a lot of it's sort of obvious. Like you kind of go into a song, Myles has recorded a vocal, he's gone. I come in. Usually it's kind of like, the choruses are so much more like from a generic standpoint of where the harmonies go. But it doesn't mean that there's not harmonies that flow throughout the song. And we just usually, myself and the producer will be like stroking our beards about, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And, it's a really fun process. I really enjoy that actually a lot.
Cool. That's really cool, man. You learn so many cool things about the process. And I think like, to me, when I was starting out, I just wanted to know everything about everything. Like there was Metallica had a 1.5 years in the life of Metallica double VHS thing.
Yeah, I remember it well. Yeah.
Dude, I wore that tape out. Like I had to buy it 2 or 3 times. It was absurd because I just wanted to know. You get so intimate. And now with the internet, I mean, you talked about like finding random bootlegs. I found, sadly, after Eddie Van Halen passed, I found some video of him playing at a party. Eric Dover is singing. Derek Sherinian's playing keys. They're doing Jump. And like Eddie's just having a blast. But it's just so cool. Like, it's something private. It's not something that, like, it looked like a hang and there's just people there. Yeah. But like, having YouTube to be able to see something like that. Like I wasn't supposed to see that. Like they were supposed to see that. It's so cool.
I know when we were kids, it was like, I actually would joke sometimes of how like as a kid, especially when I was really young and it was like vinyl, all I ever saw of a band like KISS was just what I stared at on the album cover as I listened to the record, And so you couldn't just like now, whatever band comes out, Imagine Dragons or whatever, you just call up every single show they've ever played.
Yeah.
Like we literally walk off stage some nights and I pick up my phone and there's footage from what we just did on YouTube.
It's so weird.
It's so weird, but it's a blessing and a curse. I think it's made it really. I can't imagine being a kid now because when I was a kid and finding the Rolling Stones, there were like 10 records to listen to. You know what I mean? Like or the Who or any of those old bands that you'd be like. You would find a band and you would just be like, it'd be like a little thread you'd pull at and like there's just more and more and more of this. Yeah. Now I think of kids going AC/DC or whoever, it would be like Led Zeppelin, it's like just like this wealth of things to just find. It's like it's really exciting, I think.
It's exciting, but sometimes I feel like it's too much too fast because like
it can be.
Like for me, like I used to go I had a massive CD collection. I remember taping songs off the radio to rewind. How did he play that? Rewind. How did he play that? And then a buddy of mine who was a couple years older, he's like, dude, if you love music, we got to start collecting vinyl together. And this is before like the vinyl resurgence.
Right.
So we would like drive to like thrift stores and stuff and just be flipping through the crates and just finding stuff. And like that, my record collection's at the school as well. And we have a turntable out in the lobby. So it's like all of these things that like when music was like an all-encompassing thing. It was tangible and it was, open it up, smell it, feel it, touch it.
Mm-hmm. And I find even still like the experience of, because I have a ridiculous vinyl. Not as ridiculous as a lot of my friends, but it's pretty ridiculous. The experience of listening to vinyl is more like I sit down and I listen to the record. You know what I mean? Like it's an interesting, like I don't even really think about it that I'm actually doing it once in a while. I'll put on like, I don't know, whatever you decide to pull out. And I'll actually sit there and look at the album cover like I did when I was like 9, you know what I mean? And then if it's on my phone, it's a lot more like I'm doing stuff, I'm doing whatever, I'm just playing music, It's a totally different experience. But I agree. It's whenever we kind of like, oh, I feel like we're on our like, on the patio rocking our chairs like back in my day.
Right.
It's like
I'm okay with that though. Because
you're a long way from that, sir. You'll yeah.
Well, it's everything's happening so quickly. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right. So my grand finale of these interviews, because
Okay.
our time is flying, man. I would talk to you all night long, but I don't want to keep you. I
mean,
do a series of rapid fire questions. It's one thing or the other. A lot of them are more guitar based, but I'm sure you have opinions about that sort of stuff too.
I have a lot of guitars. Yeah.
Yes. I'm saying I got the Paul Stanley Iceman, the black one, not the mirror finish one. I can't afford
Mine,
that,
I have a black one over there and a silver sparkle one behind this Gene Simmons. That's what that is. Those three.
Oh yeah,
the aligned. Yeah. Yeah. I guess I could. Oh, where is it? Yeah, that's nice. And then there's Paul McCartney behind that. So there you go.
Is it weird that I saw the three knobs in a line and I kind of thought
you just know,
but I just didn't want to be like, oh yeah, that's of course I know.
No, it's one of my favorites. Yeah,
dude, it's because I was growing up like I loved Kiss, but then I like White Zombie, and Jay from White Zombie played that guitar too, the green one.
Always.
So it's like such a cool shape.
The dude from System of a Down had a Iceman of some sort too.
Yep. And now Paul Gilbert flipped it upside down and has the fireman. And that's a whole nother.
I have a fireman here somewhere too. I was one of those weird ones that I came across, and I was like, dude, this guitar is sick. As at first you looked at it, this is ridiculous, but I plugged it in, and I was like, and I had to buy it right there, and then it was still.
Wow, I would do the same thing. I'm the worst with the impulse control.
I know.
I'm sitting in a room with like 20 guitars. It's like, yeah, okay.
I know it is what it is.
All right, so we'll start a humbucker or single coil pickup.
I've always been a humbucker guy. To be honest, I played a Strat in. It's funny that you mentioned this in my Canadian band, because we always thought it'd be really smart. He's playing like a Les Paul, the other guitar player. I'll play like a single coil, because I always like that kind of, where you can actually really Malcolm and Angus the guitars, where you can actually hear the difference. Izzy and Slash is another one that I always used. But I kind of felt challenged by it, and I'm not techie enough to kind of go, oh, you need this kind of stack and this kind of blah, blah, blah. I was always kind of like, it just doesn't quite have what I... So now whenever... Like I have a custom guitar and a custom bass through a Canadian company called Prestige, which also has the 3 in a line like that, by the way. Mm-hmm. But it's they're like a JB and a 59 in it, and it's just my dream combination. That's kind of what I go for.
I put the JB Junior in all my Strats because I like aesthetically how it looks with the 3.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
need the humbucker and the bridge. So
yeah, right. Yeah, I got to try that sometime. And there you go.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so I guess you answered the Les Paul or Strat, but okay, if it were a Fender style guitar, Strat or Tele?
I probably would say Tele. I actually am a big. I love guitars so much that it's really hard for me to kind of like.
I know these questions suck.
I know, but I found in my experience, I found Telecasters. I'm a huge Keith Richards guy, so I always have had a great attraction to almost any kind of Telecaster. It's one of my favorite things. Yeah, but that's just me.
I like the Tele because it's just a slab of wood with a neck bolted onto it. Like it's just pure and unchanged. I don't want a belly cut. I don't want any of that shit and stuff. I just wanted
It is bulletproof. It really is bulletproof. It really is kind of one of those things where you're exactly right. Like I know friends who like your Les Paul would break because you breathed on it too hard, but the Tele got thrown around and fell off the thing, and it's perfectly fine. I'm like, damn, dude, that it's something. Leo really stumbled onto something perfect there. Yeah,
it's magical.
Yeah.
For a Gibson style guitar, would it be a Les Paul or an SG?
It's funny because I have a number of Les Pauls, and my brother stole my only SG because he's my brother. But I never was really into. Here's the funny thing: I'm 6'4". And like I have a Les Paul Junior down here, which is one of my all-time favorite guitars, is the Les Paul Junior. But it looks so dorky on me because it's a junior guitar.
Right.
So I'll see photos of myself and it looks like I'm playing a ukulele. So a lot of the time things like SGs, I always kind of thought like it just looks kind of dorky on me. But I will say that on a number of occasions I've had a couple of SGs, and one of my favorite guitars is the 3 pickup Les Paul custom technically. That is an SG shape, and I would probably just acquiesce to the Les Paul, but I do have a great love and a newfound respect. Well, when I say new, probably 20 years ago, that I kind of picked up an SG and had to buy it right there and then, because it was like, this is, to be honest, it's one of those guitars that's still on the wish list. A couple of those different SGs are still kind of like the ones that I'm looking for, you know.
The Les Paul custom one, a buddy owed me some money for studio time that I'd been recording him. So he, as collateral, gave me one of those.
Nice.
And I was really disappointed when he paid the money back and took it back, because I much would have rather to hang on to the guitar.
Yeah, I know. I hear you.
For bass guitars, and if you had to choose between a P bass or a jazz bass, where would you go?
I have my P bass right here. And it's funny, this one P bass that I got for like $600 from some dude. Like, it was like my friend sent me a thing and said, dude, there's a P bass on Craigslist or something like that. That is the Dee Dee Ramone, like, it is the bass. And I go, okay, boom. I call the guy, brings it to my house. We kind of got it on, and got it on. I didn't mean for that. We got it on, musically got it on. And I was like, yeah, dude, boom. I bought it right there and then. And it has appeared, and I played it more than it's been on every single Slash record we've recorded.
Cool.
I do sort of like lean in a world of Gibson Thunderbirds, and my signature bass is more in that realm, large, like, humbucking pickups and stuff like that. But I've never owned a jazz bass, which is really weird. And they have a smaller, again, my hands are gigantic. I'm a giant.
The neck is very small to get,
But so is the Thunderbird. Like, a Thunderbird Gibson is it sort of tapers off a lot more. So I find that I for whatever reason, I was just saying to my wife yesterday, I said, I don't know why, but I'm totally in love with the Fender Precision bass all over again. I'm just kind of like, it's just one of my, I think it's, again, like the Telly, where it's sort of, or the Les Paul, where it's like, I always find, I love these rapid fire questions with really long answers, but I always laugh at me and my friends, because we do these sort of like, we run around, we're trying this guitar through that amp, and we always land back on our Les Paul through our Marshall. Right. And then you run around doing bass stuff, and I always go, who would have guessed that a P bass through an SVT is just like perfect? You're like, it's been perfect since 1950, whatever.
Yeah. I play music with this guy, a drummer, fantastic drummer, a couple decades older than me, and such a purist. And we did this big gig up in Vermont on New Year's Eve, and I brought my Axe Effects, my amp modeler, and he goes, "What the hell where's the tubes? What is it? What?" I'm like, trust me, I want to entertain the crowd and just press buttons. I don't want to be like dealing.
I totally understand. I actually live in like two worlds, where I have friends that are like, they swear by all the fractals and Kempers, and then I think there's real magic to that. And then I have other friends that are 100% not that school, who need the air moving from an amplifier. And I get it. I sort of am more in this world, but I understand the convenience of going to a gig with a Variax and just going like, boom, where you have now. Easy.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get on board with this. I was kind of a purist as well, but I got
we all are.
Friedman makes these powered cabinets that you feel the air moving, so it kind of gives the illusion of the real deal.
There you go.
All right, I don't want to keep you over, so I'm just going to go real quick with some effect pedal questions, super fast. Okay, delay or reverb?
Delay. I think I get more out of a delay personally, but yeah.
Cool. Fuzz or overdrive?
Wow. I do love a good fuzz pedal, especially even with the bass. It's always fun to play with, but. I guess it depends. It depends what I've always been, and this is, again, not really rapid, but I've always been from the AC/DC school of like, my amp sounds good, it sounds right. So whatever you're going to put in front of that doesn't matter. So the overdrive would be more like a boost at that point, I suppose, or taking it to the next level. So I'll say fuzz, because I like collecting fuzz pedals.
Cool. Fuzz is like a hard thing to wrangle. I've not mastered it yet.
It's weird, dude. You know that dude from Rival Sons has it dialed in. He has it dialed in, yeah.
Yeah, not me.
Not me either, actually. I haven't really committed to any of that kind of stuff generally.
Fuzz fascinates me because it's like the proto version of what distortion and all those things became. So it's like, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Phaser or chorus?
I will say... I found I've gotten a lot of use out of a chorus pedal, in the more subtle state of it. But with guys like Eddie, I actually, with his passing again, is another one of those things where I'm like, broke out the old Phase 90, which is right over there, and I was like, you can't. This is perfect. Like how'd they stumble on this thing? And so lately I would answer Phaser. Yeah.
Cool. All right, 2 more: Zeppelin or Pink Floyd?
Oh wow. Ouch. You know, it's so funny because I grew up on punk rock, and a lot of it was not allowed. My hardcore friends were like, "Oh, Pink Floyd, blah, blah." Right. And then I like, so it was something I discovered way later on when I said, "Why were we so opposed to listening to it?" And I just, to be honest, recently have been like, not even recently, but like in a lot of my adult years, have been like obsessed with Pink Floyd. I probably would have to acquiesce to Led Zeppelin only because, you know, if you asked me right now to jam some songs, I would know a lot of Led Zeppelin. I wouldn't know a whole lot of Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's also not jamming music. You kind of either know it or you don't. Yeah,
right.
Led Zeppelin is too, actually. So that's tough. But I'll say Zeppelin.
But Led Zeppelin has more riffs, so like riffs and grooves, and you can fall into a little easier.
You can kind of jam it sometimes. Yeah.
There's no wrong answers. And I guess I have this whole list. I'm trying to pick the ones that make sense.
No, feel free. I got a minute.
All right. So in the Pink Floyd world, would it be Dark Side or The Wall?
I'm actually a Wall guy.
Me too. Yes.
You know,
okay.
I can drag this on for a long time, but I've always been obsessed with anybody who has the ability to create a narrative line and make make music out of it. You know, like Tommy or even Jesus Christ Superstar or Rocky Horror Picture Show. I've always been like fascinated by the idea, and I've really never had the guts to kind of sit down and go like, okay, well, let's orchestrate a story, and then let's write songs about this. And you know, there's elements about it, and I've always threatened, and I still continue to threaten with my friends, like one day we're going to book a night and we're going to play The Wall in its entirety from top to bottom. I never had. I mean, obviously, Dark Side of the Moon is genius as well, but I for whatever reason, had a deeper connection to The Wall. I mean, Roger Waters is another big influence on me, and Gilmore's one of my all-time favorite guitar players.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten into like yelling arguments after a few drinks. I mean, there's something lubricating.
You're an idiot.
Yeah, but man, I'm a Wall guy all the way. Okay, so the last one I ask, a lot of people don't get the joke. So, you ever seen the movie Airheads?
Of course, it's been a while, but yeah.
Okay, so Lemmy or God and then you just say trick
Lemmy
question.
Is God.
Yeah. Thank you for getting it.
I've been fortunate enough to play many times with the man, and every night with the Slash, I sing a song called Dr. Alibi that Lemmy wrote with Slash for the solo album. So, you know, every night I get this honor of getting up there and singing this song, and he was an amazing dude, man. He really was, and he was really good to me and really good to us, and that's the answer. Honestly, when they said that, you're like, yeah, that's the only answer, really.
Yeah. I was playing music at the Cat Club one time in the early 2000s.
Oh, that place was the best.
It was a Thursday night, so like the Star Effers were playing at the end. So like, Dizzy Reed was there, Eric Dover, Eric Singer, Slim Jim, but Lemmy, I guess, on his son, he just poked his head in while we were playing music. So like, I'm on the stage and I look over and I look back at my bandmates and they're like, I think so. I'm like, no way.
I know, it literally is like a unicorn just walked in the room.
It's like, it was insane.
Yeah.
Didn't get to communicate, but I felt honored to breathe in the air that he exhaled into the room.
Exactly. The Cat Club is a deeply missed club in that city, actually. I find it to be.
I was so bummed. Like, I didn't know. So I'm sorry. One more thing. I'm sorry to keep you. We used to play out. We would go to the NAMM show every year, and we would always book a West Coast tour around it.
Great.
And I did that for like 8 years solid, and then Life, and then stopped. So I went out like 2 years ago, and I was trying to show my girlfriend. I was like, "This amazing club. It'll be great." It's like, "It's an Irish bar. What?"
I know. Every time I drive down that street or I'm on that street, I'm always like, oh, right. Yeah, you kind of forget because it was such a great little, like you say, it'd be like anybody who's who would be in the club jamming on those nights. And Gilby would be there all the time and guys like that. And Slim Jim's still one of my all-time heroes. So, you know, it was weird times. But, yeah. Well, that's what the Lucky Strike or there's a number of different places in L.A. now that you can do this, a similar thing, yeah.
It's very sad. But if dudes like you keep rocking, then we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So, see, I did that?
Thank yourself, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry I went a bit over, but this has been incredible.
My pleasure.
Stay safe out there.
Yes.
And hopefully we all come through this. Happy holidays as they approach us.
Yes.
And I look forward to watching it on the internet, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you too. Everybody out there, keep on rocking and doing your thing for sure. Thanks. That was great seeing you, Rob.
Awesome. You too, man.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.